welcome you to the Board of Selectmen regular meeting of February 19th, 5 o'clock. Our first item on the agenda is to receive the CERC report. Hopefully you all have them at your places. And then the second item is to review the proposed 2020 budget and make recommendations to the Board of Finance. I have some opening remarks. First on our agenda, you've received the report from CERC. This document is simply a narrative write-up and documentation of all the material that CERC presented to us at our board meetings in September and November of 2018. As you will recall, CERC analyzed our town's fiscal health by examining the grand list and then looking for cost efficiencies and opportunities for further exploration, specifically with regard to our school district consolidation. I will direct your attention to page 59 of the report just briefly. It stated the smallest quartile of homes have held their value with the best over time, followed by the largest quartile of homes. The mid-size homes, or middle two quartiles, have trend lines that slope downward more significantly, indicating a decrease in sales price over time. In examining the data by number of bedrooms, similar trends emerge. The smallest homes have held their value over time better than larger homes. And considering future development in Woodbridge, these trends helped identify the types of housing currently in demand. These findings may also be indicative of larger trends of the town should consider as it examines its fiscal future, as declining home values in large segments of the market could reduce revenue or result in a mill rate increase if expenditures are not reduced in conjunction with home values. Now turning to our proposed budget, you'll see that our grand list update received February 1st, 2019 does indeed show the very modest growth, which the CERC report highlighted. The value of real property increased by 0.53% over the previous year. We will discuss further details of how this factors into our mill rate later in the evening. The main topic tonight will be our review of budget requests for fiscal year 2019-20, and we will vote on our recommendations for any adjustments we would like to make to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance will then have an opportunity to make additional adjustments to come up with a proposed budget that will ultimately go to the people of Woodbridge, first at the public budget hearing on April 22nd, and then to the annual town meeting on May 20th. We will begin by looking at the requests received from our town departments and our two school districts, Beecher and Amity. Initial requests totaled just over $53 million, which, if left unchanged, would amount to a 7.8% increase in spending over the current fiscal year budget. This is the starting point of our process. In preparation for tonight's meeting, I've asked Tony Genovese, in his role as Town Finance Director, to identify ways to minimize the impact to taxpayers while ensuring we continue to provide all necessary services to townspeople with next year's budget. He will step us through a series of recommendations that we can consider. Tony and I have been capturing efficiencies throughout the fiscal year. With shared service efforts and consolidation of staffing, we've achieved savings that can now be embedded in our budget, such as the library and in the finance department. We will continue to explore and capture additional cost savings, and Tony will talk more about these efforts as we go through the documents tonight. I will note that, especially with regard to the Woodbridge Board of Ed budget request, we continue to work with Superintendent Gilbert and District Director of Business Services, Al Pulo, to fine-tune and look for adjustments to the Beecher budget as we await updates on items such as health insurance costs. So the timing of this information will be more in line with the Board of Finance's consideration of budget decisions. They will begin their deliberations at a meeting scheduled for March 7th. I look forward to tonight's collaborative discussion with you all, my fellow members of the Board of Selectmen. I'm confident this process will result in a joint decision to move us forward in our annual budget setting process. With that introduction, let's start by looking at the summary pages in our packet, and I will turn it over to Tony to give us an overview.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So there are two summary pages in your package. The first is our pro forma budget. It has a list of departments on it, and so the requested budget, as Beth indicated, was for all departments is $53,356,811, and after you minus out non-tax revenues, it's a amount to be raised by taxes of just over $50 million. If you factor in the suggestions that Beth had discussed and mentioned, the expenditures are reduced to $51,647,640. You can see each department there. We have details that we will go through in a moment, but that brings the expense increase to 4.35%. Does everyone follow me on the page where we're looking? Yeah. And the non-tax revenues remain unchanged, primarily because the governor's budget address is tomorrow, right? Tomorrow.
Yep.
And so,
Brace yourselves.
right, that can have an impact, significant impact on that section. And
At least it's not October,
yeah,
which we got last year, right?
last year was in October.
Yeah.
It
Sorry.
was 2 years ago, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And 48, that's what the amount to be raised by taxes is about $48 million. With our grand list of $1.16 billion, you'll see the mill rate of 41.39, which is 3.92% over the previous year. So that's sort of a summary of where we are currently. I have, as you may make suggestions this evening, I can make adjustments to that so you can identify exactly where we are in the budget and in the mill rate as we go along. The second item, page, the tax calculation page, I just want to highlight that for a moment. That's the grand list information, and that's this page. So it's, I want to just review the grand list for a moment. So Betsy filed the grand list on the 1st of February. And as Beth indicated, real estate went up 0.53%. Personal property went down 1.72%. Primarily, that's a factor in that is the depreciation of the fuel cell over at this high school, which was in last year's grand list. But as you know, personal property depreciates in value, so that's why that one goes down. Motor vehicles are pretty flat, 0.4% for the motor vehicle grand list increase in the supplemental. And the water company pilot's just over 1%. Now, in order to, we have a few reserves that we put into our tax collection just to reserve for certain things that are either by ordinance or, in this case, the first one is uncollected taxes. So we put a reserve of $5.2 million. That's grand list dollars. So in actual dollars, it's about $217,000, which is roughly how much we don't collect in taxes each year. So we build in a reserve to essentially charge everyone else for people that don't pay their taxes in a particular year. It's a common practice. We do it every single year. And so that's what that represents. The second one is for the firefighters abatement, which was recently passed. That's the $600,000 figure you see. That's the grand list dollars. And that's about $25,000 in actual dollars, which is roughly what we had discussed when we went through the process. And finally, the elderly tax stabilization, and that's $180,000. That's an ordinance also. And that's also pretty stable, and it has been in the last few years. So that's sort of how we arrive at the net grand list number. I just want to make sure everyone was clear about that. Any questions on that? No?
Oh, it's a snooze. Sorry. I slept 5 minutes, so sorry. That was the alarm for 5 o'clock, so we could start. Sorry.
So as you can see, we didn't have much growth here. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So the first thing I think we should review.
Tony, the growth that we did have is consistent with previous years, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Pretty much,
And-
yeah. It was. I think it was around this. Last year was roughly the same, 0.4, and the year before that was a little lower, actually, 0.25 maybe. So the last 3 years have been not much growth. So we do have a revaluation coming up, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next section is the capital budget. If anyone has any objections, we can review the capital budget.
It's in the back.
It's towards the back,
Yep.
yeah.
Would you prefer to go department by department, or
Yeah, or do you just want to ask questions, or how would you?
highlights? How do you want to do this?
I prefer to go to each, just like you said, each department. If we
Okay.
want to skip around or something like that,
Okay,
that's fine.
so we start with
Okay.
assessor, is that, what's number one?
Sure.
Okay,
So, the assessor, we have, as I indicated, we have a revaluation coming up, and, so this is roughly half of the budget for that. It's mainly for outside inspections and for assistance for Betsy. She does all of the viewing herself, so, this used to be several $100,000, but because she reviews all the properties herself, we have a small amount we have in our budget for, outside help for Betsy. So that one we kept this, we remain the same.
any
What's the
questions?
implication of when we do the revaluation, is there any anticipated implication, or?
It all sort of all depends on the revaluation. The last time we did one, properties all went down. The grand list lost value. So I'm not sure, some years in the past, the grand list has gained value. Last time we did it, it lost value.
Well, we're doing it every 5 years now.
Right.
By statute, it used to be 10.
Right.
So you could, when property values were appreciated,
Right,
you probably had a significant increase.
We did,
A lot,
yeah, yeah.
any questions on assessor? That's it, okay. Next is the Board of Education, this is the Woodbridge Board of Education.
The first item is the HVAC for the school, and this one's a little difficult because you haven't gotten the report yet for that. This references.
The Van Zelm.
Right.
We're gonna have the, just so you guys know, we're gonna have the ad hoc committee come to we're gonna ask them to finish up and come to the March Board of Selectmen meeting to give us the report, and it'll somewhat impact this, but we pulled some of that out
Right.
to put this together. Some of the things we knew about.
So this would be the anticipated funding for 2020, which is a little over $40,000. The remainders would be funded out of the current year.
You lost me on that, I'm sorry.
The
So-
remainder of the 500,000?
No, so we have,
The HVAC.
the report is currently being reviewed. It's roughly a budget of $140,000. So the $100,000 has been identified for the current year, and $40,000 roughly for starting July 1, 2020.
It's not.
It's not 500.
The 500
right.
was just a placeholder
Oh,
as a
okay.
possibility, but it's not that we cut it, it's just that it's not needed.
At
So
this time,
this
At this
reflects
time.
what's
Right.
required at this time, the
Correct.
$41,000,
Yep.
okay.
for next year,
Right.
it'll be about $100,000 for the current year, which we'll have to find with existing funds.
We'll get that all explained in
That'll be all
March.
explained in March.
We hope at March, if they finish. Ad hoc's still working on it, but hopefully it'll be done in March. Get it finished, which I'd like to do. Any questions on those two? Okay.
And but the report and everything supports the $41,000.
Correct.
The requirement
Right.
for the $41,000.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have to do it. Okay. The interior and exterior doors, I think we.
It's a reduction because the school already did the cafeteria doors, so. that
Everything else
reduces
is the
It's
same.
about $8,000 thereabouts.
So we left the rest of that
So
in.
the rest of that's in there,
Yeah. Technology infrastructure kept the same.
right?
So technology infrastructure, do we know, I'm sorry,
What was
is
it,
that
May?
to improve the current scenario, or the current wireless, things of that nature, if I remember correctly, was what we read it?
Right, there's for upgrades of wiring and switching and replacement of access points.
Is that to address dead spots and things of that nature, or is it an upgrade of the existing infrastructure?
I
I
don't
don't know if we can
remember.
ask that. I don't know what the process is in terms of those kind of questions.
Well, it's $20,000 a year for the next 5 years
Right.
after this allotment.
Right.
So we couldn't possibly be talking about upgrading wireless every year for 20,000.
It's not just wireless, but it's not,
But
it's
whatever
not
it
devices.
is, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
But there's a, 100,000 beyond this 31.7.
Yeah. Would you entertain asking to explain that while we're here, as long as
Yeah.
you're here?
So in the capital budget, when we presented that, we talked about a couple of areas. One was a universal power supply and switches in our network closet. So it's a huge building, 170,000 square feet. So there's a lot of closets where the wireless network.
Wait a minute, you know what? You gotta come up to the microphone. I'm getting a signal from the back room that we can't, you're not recording, I'm sorry. Sorry, Nance. Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot, but
Pushing the button.
let's get it answered
There we
now.
are.
We left it the same, so we're not changing it, but just, I guess, at least
Sure.
but it's up to the board, so help them.
So there was the expansion of the battery backup for our universal power supply, which was one main part of that, 31,000. We continually have wiring upgrades and switches. Each year we focus on different wings in the building, so that is part of it as well. All the items are E-rate eligible, so we get some money back on that. And so that really, that focuses on what we've got there. A smaller, I believe a smaller cost than we had last year for our capital request. It does ultimately improve the technology infrastructure that we have, and we rely on that greatly because we are using technology for virtually all the kids on iPads, wireless. So it's an integral part of the system. It's an integral part of the structure.
In essence, I guess what my question really goes with is, there's a general need to look at places to reduce the budget.
Mhm.
And this type of an item, UPS and the wiring, et cetera, believe me, nobody can appreciate having that more than I can. But is it a requirement, in other words, to address a particular limitation and/or absence of technology in an area, or is it truly like UPS? Can you get through with the UPS you have? And that's, I guess, or if you're going to look for a place or find a place where you might be able to reduce something, is this a place we should be looking, that type of thing? Not that we would, that decision still needs to be made, but I'm just trying to determine if it's, as opposed to, we've got no coverage in this part of the gym.
Right.
And it causes a problem because, or whatever, that type of thing.
So one way to look at that is, what would this stand against in terms of, is this more important than something? I'm not sure what it would be coming up against in terms
Right.
of forced choices, but I do think that, look, if the bottom fell out and this didn't happen, life would go on. It would go on at a slower pace, probably more interruptible, and it would, and at some point we'd probably be playing catch up with it, I would think, down the road. So I think that's probably how I'd best explain that at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody have any other questions on that?
I just have one question, Bob,
Sure.
while you're here. Does this amount include that virtual server that was in the capital?
That was
Presentation?
done this current year. Am I right,
Okay.
the virtual server, the virtual?
They have not done the virtual server. They replaced it with a
Conventional?
Oh, okay.
real, on-site server. The virtual server, to my knowledge, is not being done.
Okay.
Are you looking at that from last year's budget? Is that what you're?
Well, because it was projected out, it was a significant amount, so I was thinking maybe that was part of the 20,000 that's projected out over the next 5 years.
I can't answer that actually without our tech director here in
Okay.
terms of the specifics on that.
So just to confirm, these numbers in bold, we're looking at department request. Those were approved by the Board of Ed, right?
Correct.
Okay, next request was, item 6, asphalt replacement.
You skipped the,
Oh, what'd I skip?
HVAC
Oops, I skipped the one with the
equipment.
water cooler, right?
that's the with the drinking fountain, right?
Drinking fountain, right, okay.
This is
Oh,
for,
those are the old HVAC.
HVAC and miscellaneous, right.
so the reduction is the, not replacing the drinking fountain. The vestibule and corridor unit ventilator replacements are still in there for 42,000.
Pipe up. What do you think?
Okay.
It's a little late in the game,
Well, what?
from my standpoint.
What?
A little late in the game.
Okay.
If I might make a comment on that regard, Joe, one of the things I'm thinking of is this doesn't due until March, if I'm not mistaken, Tony?
March
March
1st.
7th.
March 1st.
Actually, it's got to be
Oh,
to the board by March 1st.
First, okay,
Right.
for their meeting on the 7th.
Right.
As we go through this, I would think that we should consider the fact that we can get together again, one more time.
We don't have to make a decision
really-
tonight.
To really
Yeah,
look through this, you know,
My
just,
comment is really related to one of process and fairness, I think. We had talked a long time ago about giving direction from this board to the departments. And whatever we wanted to decide,
Mhm.
10% more, 10% less, whatever. We didn't do that, so they went through their process and they presented our budgets and so forth, and, you know,
Well, there's still
to-
time.
for now. Yeah, but is it fair? I mean, it's much more fair in October to tell them we're looking for a reduction than to have them come in 2 weeks and then we
Did you bring
start
that up
cutting
at the
it.
meeting when they presented to us?
Well, I brought it up to this board a long time ago.
Right, and then
it
at
went
the
nowhere.
meeting,
Went
yeah.
nowhere.
Okay,
So no, I didn't bring it up. I mean,
Okay.
that's for this board to decide, in my mind. Do we want to take control and have some leadership over this budget or not? Not a week before. But it's a budget process revision that I feel is
well, they
necessary.
came to us in December,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we've had their request
We had
since
one
December,
meeting, right?
Right,
And so we're supposed to go through a $15 million budget when they present it to us in a half an hour. This board is supposed to do that?
No,
we had it since December. We could have had, if you wanted to talk about this from December to now, you could have brought that to me and I would have been
Well,
happy to
you
do
know I
it.
wanted to talk about it, because I brought it to you 8 months ago, and I
Right.
proposed that we do that. It went nowhere. So, it's just my opinion.
we didn't at that time communicate like you said. I agree, I think we all talked about it, but it didn't necessarily occur. However, we still need to look at it now and determine, in light of all
Well,
of
I
the
would
overall
suggest
numbers.
then we tell them to go back and start looking at reductions. Not only the Board of Ed, but all the departments.
And I,
If
and
we
I,
have time, then I think it's unfair now, but if you're asking me, that's what I would say.
well, I don't know, and I understand what you're saying. I don't know that I agree entirely, only because you don't know necessarily what you're going to get until you're presented with what they want. Now that we see what they want, and we've gotten that, and we've had that for a while, we see that we can't afford that. We just can't afford to do everything that's there. So therefore, we have to make some adjustments, and that's what I'm suggesting we do at this point.
I agree, and that's a component, but what we had talked about before was if we gave enough time and we said we wanted, just pick a number, a 5%
Yeah, I
reduction.
remember, believe me.
All right, come in with that 5% reduction and tell us what gets carved out of your budget. Do we lose a program? Do we lose? Then we have sufficient time to make a decision. As a policy, do we want that 5% reduction, because can we afford that program loss? I don't know that we have that time right now, but if the board feels we do, I have no problem saying, let's go back and find further reduction, because every year we get 2, 3, 4% increases, our mill rate's 42%. our property values are down and we gotta start doing something about our expenditure.
And I'm hoping this is a start, Joe. Is the way I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it as we've got to start somewhere. And why not start now with the intent of going
Well,
into the next year, making sure everyone understands that this has got to change. We've got to go in a different direction than what we're going in.
We
So-
could do that, and I would add to that, that next year, I hope, before October, we get together as a board, whatever that board is, and we set the direction of where we want the objectives to be. Because I think it's then more fair as they go through the process.
I get it. I just feel that it's important that, like, before this is completed, to not just present what was presented and take a look at it as closely as we can with the time that we have. And if we feel there's something we can do, suggest that we do it. I mean, we're gonna present something to finance, and I feel pretty strongly that we should consider as a board what we wanna present. To the point is, if we wanna say right now that, no, you know what, this is not gonna fly, we gotta go down 2%, let's all take it home and next week get together and let's see where we suggest. I think now what we can do with folks like the Board of Education is at least point to certain things that we say, here's an area where we feel something needs to be done. And that's what I was hoping we would do today, and identify.
Well, we could
those
do it
areas.
today, but it's gonna be a long meeting if we do that.
Well, that's
So-
okay. I'm here until midnight.
Okay, then we gotta go
I
through,
think,
we
Okay.
gotta go
Beth
through
and-
every line item in
Okay.
here.
Beth and Tony have done a lot already, and I'm just suggesting that maybe we look at it and say, here's what more we can do.
Okay.
Here's what more we wanna do.
That's fine.
Let's do it.
My only objective is, objection, sorry, is that, I don't think that we're qualified to make the decisions as to what's more important than, I think that needs to go back to the Board of Ed, because we may say, I'm just saying for an example, well, grounds care and site improvement, I don't know, $25,000, maybe we can push that off, because I'm thinking, oh, it's landscaping. But after we saw the report that they gave, we saw the significant erosion that they're having in the parking lot, and they might say, no, that's actually a safety issue, so that's not what they would, you know what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't make the decisions because we might not have all the information, whereas Board of Ed, using their department meetings, can go and determine what's a priority for this
So
year
you're
and
saying
next
do a
year.
percentage and just have them find a
Yes, I think
percentage that
that's-
they can,
I think a percentage makes more sense, because then it allows all the department, and I'm not even saying that it has to be a flat 2%, because if it obviously jeopardizes like our education, then we need to say, that's not a good idea. You know, if it cuts too much, but like, I think it's the onus on the boards to go and figure out what's the priority and what could be maybe put off for a year.
So I think I agree with Terry, because I think she just restated what I said, so I agree with that, Terry.
so you're saying it for all the departments or just some departments, or we go back and we say everybody X percent?
But I guess, now we're up against the clock.
Yes,
We've got a week.
of course.
If the board doesn't meet in the next week, how are they gonna do what they're gonna do?
That's where
So-
I talked about the fairness and all that, because.
But we are where we are.
Yeah.
And my sense is, I completely agree with what you're saying. How do we get that done? And I'm just looking at it from a logistics standpoint. We're here to present a budget to the Board of Finance
By March 1st.
by March 1st. If we
2
want to
weeks.
present what Beth and Tony did and we just want to let it go and not look it over and talk about it, then
Well,
so be it.
in actual fact, the Board of Finance has the control
Final say,
over it anyway,
absolutely.
so, I mean,
But I
What
do
we
think
do
it's a
is-
great opportunity to send a message that something's got to change.
well, I'm with you there.
So, they've already started it. I'd like to see us just at least review it, understand it, and come up to a conclusion as to what we want to do. I don't disagree with you, that's exactly what I was thinking. One of the things I wanted to suggest is that we consider saying, how do we take 1% or 2% off of everything? That type of thing there. How can we bring this down to a point that we feel where we want it to be? Whatever that might be, whether it's under 40 mils, whether it's X increase, X% increase. I'd love for us to be able to get to something along those lines as a board.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, so
I don't know exactly how to do that in a week, but I'm with you.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
They meet next week. Every department, we ask them to come back.
And then when does the Board of Finance,
Their first meeting's on the 7th of March.
and
They
then,
have until April 1st, if you look in the charter.
And
So
we have
they
enough.
have time.
Departments have
right.
until February 1st to get it to the budget process.
Okay.
Then the Board of Selectmen has until March 1st. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Jerry. And then the Board of Finance has until April 1st to get it to the town.
okay. So
Those
they
are
have
the
3
sort of
weeks or so.
Those are the, you know. And that's I'm not sure what
So-
happens if you get it to them
Okay.
by March 2nd, you know.
Okay,
That's
Yeah.
just what the charter says. Yeah.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that means.
Charter
But
violation.
there's other opportunities after March 1st, is I think your point. Even
Right.
though,
Yeah.
you know,
Before it's
Right.
ultimately sent to the Board
right,
of
and
Finance.
we could send this, certainly, we could do two things.
We
We
could
could
actually-
stay tonight, we could send what we have
We
with a
can send
cover
message
letter.
to the Board of-
With a cover letter to the Board of Finance, that, you know, due to time, whatever, we're sending this, but we do believe there's cost savings, again, and we'd like you to look at more percentage down, something like that. Or we send a letter out to all the departments and say, yeah, everybody's gotta try to find 1 to 2% in their budget. So I will leave it up to you guys I'm one person out of 6.
Yeah, I just personally don't think that we have enough information to just
It would,
randomly
it would
take
just
cut
be
from different
haphazard
areas.
cutting
Yeah.
as far as I'm
I don't-
concerned.
For us to do it?
For us to do
Okay.
it.
I
We-
don't,
you know,
I don't think
they-
that's fair to the department.
So
They
then
presented
perhaps-
to us one time, and we can't purport to know everything that's behind all
Yeah, we're
those
still
budgets.
asking questions, and here we are tonight, you know, so.
So,
So is your recommendation then, as a group, that we we'll continue to go over it tonight? And we have done some reductions, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some reductions
Right.
from what was, I mean.
We got
you
it,
could
we
see-
got it from, what did we do, Tony?
53 to-
53 to 51,
Yeah.
so we took off a couple million,
yeah, no, I saw that.
you know, just.
That's good. Where there's a couple million, there may be a couple million more.
Well, the Board of Finance has the opportunity to find perhaps that part of it, and we could certainly send, draft a letter that I could send to you, just saying, as a board, we felt we did some of it, but we'd like to see you continue to take off whatever that percentage is. Or do you want to come up with a number, or you just want me to just suggest that they continue to reduce? It's up to you.
Well, I haven't heard from David or Joe, so
Okay. What do you think, Joe?
No, I agree with you.
Okay.
I mean, any mill rate over 40 makes me nervous, because I think that really is the tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
And to stay under 40, we'd have to save an additional
$1.6
million?
$5 million.
Well, we did too.
right.
Or-
Maybe. You got a week to
It's
find
tough.
two
I mean,
more.
I feel terrible about it. It's just.
No, it's not,
it's a
it's not
tough thing.
anything to be, to consider lightly.
Yeah,
It's-
1.65 million you need in addition. That's not including what happens from the governor's budget, which could add to that figure.
Yeah, well, it's not gonna,
Certainly
it's
not
not
gonna
gonna
reduce
help
it.
it.
Of course, right.
So I don't know how.
So
everybody-
what do you think? Should we continue to review this evening?
Or-
And
Or,
Here's the
perhaps
thing.
there's other things in your mind that we didn't find that you know. I mean,
I don't want to say too much, but
We've only cut
I
right,
can't not.
say
that's
as
what we're
much
here
as you
for.
want.
It's our job.
If this goes to if this goes to the finance,
Uh-huh.
anything that leaves from here, whether it's today or whenever it might be, has our name on it,
As a recommendation.
as
to
a
the Board.
recommendation. So from my perspective, one, I'd like to make sure that I understand it all, and I recognize everything that has been changed, and agree with it. And if there's something else that we come across that we feel is a question that we can ask Tony, or is something that we feel qualified enough to make a decision on. But to not look at it, to not review it, I think is,
Oh, I didn't say not
no, I know.
look
but
at it.
I'm
Of course,
saying,
we
but
have to look at
like,
it.
Review even
And I
the
would
capital
hope if you
budget.
see something in here that we missed, or something you'd like to do on your own, that's, you can do that. This isn't mine alone.
There's some questions I have
Sure.
along the lines of, for example, the fire department has technology in there, again, for, as if they're on their own. And we've said we're gonna consolidate with Amity in terms of technology. Why can't we just have Amity be a department, their technology department be a department, and everyone who's getting anything has to go through that, period? They're the ones who have the budget, so there is no budget for technologies anywhere else but there, except for the police department,
That
who
might
requires
be a
something different.
a contractual agreement that we would have to go through with the Amity Board of Education, correct? Maybe? I don't know.
For firing?
No, for any kind of,
I'm just saying,
for
technology
any
generally
kind of
speaking.
technology through Amity, have them do it all. Wouldn't we have to do a contract of some kind with them?
Yeah, we have one.
Right, but he's saying for everything, even fire, or,
It's a function of how much time they have to spend. So, we have, I believe everything's included in the current contract, but it's a function of how much time they spend. And then we review that quarterly, and how much time they spend, we adjust the amount that we pay
okay.
based on. So, we would just have to adjust how much we pay them to account for how much time they spend over here.
Okay.
That kind of goes to Terry's point, are we Mika raises a good question, but are we competent just to say, well, I think it should go to Amity, so I'm cutting that out? We don't know.
Well, in a sense, we're not cutting it, we're putting it somewhere else. It could be the same thing, and it could be on their budget as opposed to the others, but at least if there's some economies to be had, they can have it.
Well, we just have to figure that out in 2 weeks, I guess. I don't want to keep going back to that, but it does put a lot of pressure on.
I just have a question, because I don't understand. Making a recommendation to the Board of Finance doesn't mean that that's our final recommendation, does it? Because it's a preliminary budget hearing, at which
Well, no,
time
but
maybe there'll be other things
As
to,
Mika says, it's our,
at our first pass.
well, we recommend it to the
Yeah.
Board of Finance. And typically, we've just always done that, and then, because
And then
they
it just sits.
they really own it, though.
Right.
And they set the budget, and therefore, we've kind of just taken you
But
and
certainly, if
Tony.
there are other things that come up as time goes on, forget about the state part of it, because that may make it worse rather than better, but we could certainly make a further recommendation.
Yes.
Up until the preliminary budget hearing, and then that happens, we go back again,
Well,
once we have that meeting.
I guess
It
so.
really
although-
isn't completely final and voted on until May.
Right, but because we don't own the budget, I don't know what the charter says about, it says we make a recommendation, right, up to a certain time. I
Right.
haven't looked at the charter in a while.
Right.
So once that date goes by, I don't know whether we have the statutory power to do anything again.
I don't know.
I don't know, it's never been an
I
issue.
don't know. Well, we could
Never.
find
It's
out.
never been an issue because we always
Sure,
just recommend.
we just send it
Right.
off as it is.
To the
Never-
board, and
right.
then they do something.
And then they do it.
Right.
and-
And the Board of
Hence-
Finance sometimes
hence
have had
we're
one
at
meeting,
42 point something.
They've had-
sometimes they have one meeting, sometimes they have 5 meetings.
Right.
It all depends on.
So I don't know the best way to
Okay.
proceed. We could stay here and go through
Why don't we do
all of
that?
this,
Why
but
don't we do that? We're here tonight to do this. I think we should,
So
we
you
have an
have,
obligation
we could
to.
at least, I guess, make
Just,
the question say, go back to the particular department and say, hey,
Good.
can you live
Right.
without this?
Right.
yeah,
What happens if you live without this?
Right.
Type things.
just to, if you take off of the recommendations that we have this evening, you need an additional 3.25%, if you're thinking percent-wise. And it's 6%.
3/4 or 3.25? 3.25.
Right.
Total, the whole budget.
And then 6% over the original requests, if you start from the request. Keep in mind, you can't take 6% off of debt service, for instance.
No, of course. You can't.
Right,
But if the state makes further reductions, then it's all for naught, then you have to come back and readdress it.
that's true.
Correct.
I think you
That's
should
true.
wait till after the governor makes his budget
Right,
adjustments.
we'll know
That's a good plan.
maybe tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Tomorrow he's presenting the budget.
We'll probably know by tomorrow afternoon.
But even then, that's not set in stone because the General Assembly still has to act on it.
Yeah, but he's gonna present the budget, it's not gonna be finalized.
Right.
Right,
Right.
that's what he,
It's
yeah,
still a question mark, we can't
Right.
go by that.
Well, I don't know, is there any way, Joe, you would know better than anybody, is there any, after he presents the budget, is there any way of getting some kind of a range of where we think the towns might be in terms of a reduction
No, I
in
think
state
that's
money?
wait till the appropriations committee, makes their final decision, and then then the
When would that be,
few,
typically?
few weeks. I
Okay,
think that's
so-
what-
There goes our time.
And 2 years ago, it was in October.
Yeah, right, but,
Yeah. so-
but even if they do it in the regular course, it's really
Right.
beyond our
Right.
timeframe.
Right.
So,
Sometimes if you make an educated, you have to take the risk. That's one benefit of having a deep, good fund balance, is you can take a risk on the first year. And you have to.
well, you have to, right?
Because you might not know by
Right,
the time you set the budget.
if we, let's say we did no reductions, we
Right.
send it to, finance, Board of Finance, and they, 1 or 2%, whatever, their budget's passed.
Mhm.
And then the state comes and says, well, that's all great, but
Yeah.
now,
You've taken
you
additional-
don't have this money.
Right.
So,
That's possible.
we gotta get that money from
ECS, yeah.
our fund.
Correct.
So
That's
we
one
place we
reason
can
why
get
you
it.
have a fund balance, is uncertainty in that process.
but the problem with that, you can't use that every year. It's just, you
No,
can't.
no, which is, yeah,
You can't.
can't do that, I know. That's why we're really coming up to budgetary crunches, and it's time we really have to do something about it. Because state's in bad shape.
Yep. Okay, well, why don't we keep going, at least with this line items, the line items, at least in the capital budget. So where were we? Equipment, HVAC and miscellaneous,
That one we discussed.
right,
Next
Okay.
is
asphalt replacement.
And,
You guys wiped that out.
we did.
It's up to you if you want to put it back in.
I don't see how we do that.
In light of all the requests that we have.
Right,
I don't see how we do that.
okay. You just don't want to hurt too hard, but it's just certain things we just can't do right
In the
now.
next budget, there's $500,000 so that they can get that possibly.
Right.
The big job done that
Oh, right.
was,
Correct.
seemed like pretty needed. and
Just put it
hopefully
off
get something.
a budget cycle. It's still in there, it's just that maybe not this year. Okay, and then there was a grounds care request for 50,000, and we thought maybe we could do half of it
Right.
this year. Get started with it anyway, because as Terry said, it's
There
needed.
was some needed stuff.
Yeah, this could at
That
least
was
to begin
to
trees
address
and,
the erosion issue?
Correct.
right,
Yeah.
and taking down some of the trees and stuff, get started on it. So, it's up to you, pipe up if you want to put stuff back in, or,
I think you need to do it.
okay. So that's the Board of Education. Then the Board of Selectmen.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
The,
Thank you.
What's the town center campus?
The first year of that is the funding of the storage facility in the back of the fire.
the shed. So, okay,
Okay?
That's my vote only.
okay. Anybody else?
Wait,
Anything
90,000 was for the shed?
The
Yeah.
shed,
What's the
behind the
implication?
firehouse.
What's the implication
Well,
on the
we have the
firehouse?
stuff that's in the
old
fire, in the old firehouse, and we'll have to find another place to
Those are
put it on.
alternatives.
But that still gets
Location.
done. The old firehouse still gets
It
done.
has to.
Yeah, we have to do
We
it,
have
even
to.
though there's a steep grant, so if you want to take that out, we'll just have to find another place to store it for another year.
Yeah,
That's it.
correct.
So, what do you think? Joe had a,
I'm looking at this number going across, it's $235,000. What does that represent?
Just on this.
we had some sidewalk projects, don't you remember I came and gave you that
Yeah,
whole
there's
thing?
It's a bunch of things in there.
There's a whole bunch of things.
It's,
We would
Shed.
shed, the sidewalk, maybe some
we're actually looking,
wayfinding.
we're actually looking for grants for the sidewalk, so
Right.
that's,
Right.
hopefully will disappear.
Right, beyond this year, the only thing that we're gonna have to worry about is that shed. And if you wanna put it out,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that if we
I
have to.
think we have a grant for the sidewalks.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Out or in?
I'll put it in a list here, and then we can always review it
shed?
at the end.
I'd be for
Put
taking
it on
it
the
out.
list to be removed.
Okay,
Yeah,
so is
Yeah.
Joe.
Potential,
I
yeah, yeah.
think
potential, and then you can
non-essential at this point.
I think it's essential, but I defer to the five of
The
you, so.
problem is, we think
I
everything's.
think
the
we
I
should
know,
same.
find
I
some
know.
space for
I think
why
I
our
wanna do all of the
budget keeps
groundskeeping, and I
growing.
wanna do, I know, it's,
Alright,
okay, so we just, okay.
we can find
So
space.
put it as a possibility of
yep.
reduction,
Got it.
okay?
Hit list.
And the wayfinding signs, we pulled that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
maybe we can get grants,
Same
or we
reason.
have another opportunity perhaps to begin to ask businesses to pay for them.
Right.
So we just took that right out. So the Board of Selectmen capital budget just went to boom, zero. Capital. Okay, building maintenance,
Old South School, we removed the painting.
yeah, Brad said we
Brad
could
mentioned
wait.
that.
He said we could wait another year or two, so we'll just take it out.
And
The senior center remodel is,
we'll push that out.
we'll just put it out a year. It's
Is that
just,
for phase two?
there isn't a phase one for the senior center?
Phase one and
Current
two.
is the bathroom.
Well-
Phase one's the bathroom and the ramp?
Yeah, I don't know if it was in phases, but
Aren't there
Yeah.
a source of funds for that? I mean,
not yet.
We're
looking into it?
looking into it, yes.
But we just put it out a year. They know that. And the other thing that is in that is the Thomas Darling House.
What exactly were we doing there?
Leland had a list, if you recall, Leland came.
It was a lot of
and-
work that
Yeah, I
had to
don't,
be done.
I don't.
I know,
A lot of work had to be done in the barn.
Yep.
And it was
Barn,
Barn,
that's,
yeah.
it was a lot
but he
of,
put
a
it
lot of it
in,
was.
but he put it into phases or
right.
years, so that
Right.
it wasn't, the stuff for
Right.
this year is,
I mean, it's not a
it's
hard
not a
and
lot.
fast
If I remember,
Right.
if I remember correctly. yeah.
most of it was the barn, though, they had
Mostly
to
the
get
barn,
the
yeah.
schoolhouse thing out of there.
Yeah,
and, you know.
correct.
Right,
And it had
yeah.
implications as to further deterioration because of weather and things of that nature.
Right.
it's about to
Barn
go,
should be- The Darling House property and the barn should be eligible for grant.
absolutely.
It is, yeah.
And we have an opportunity, we have a couple of grants that we're looking into. So we left it in as a, but it's up to you.
Yeah, Sheila.
Well, I think Leland was telling us if we don't do it, then another year might be an issue in terms of further deterioration,
Right.
right?
Yeah, my concern is that the walls are coming down in that yellow barn right now, and we have to get little Lucy out of there. So, which we can put in storage trailers in the meantime, but we've gotta get it. It's up to you.
I don't think it's quite that dire, because I asked that question at the
Did you
last
see it?
meeting. Did I see it? No,
Yeah.
but I asked the experts if they
What-
thought it was
Yeah.
in,
You know, why don't we just ask Leland again?
Okay.
That specific question.
said it wasn't structurally
wait
unsound, but
till-
it needed to be attended
You
to.
wanna,
Okay, we'll put that as a perhaps. Country Club of Woodbridge, nothing. Now the Fire Commission,
the fire commission, the engine 7 is a lease, so we have to pay that. And the air packs is also a lease, so we have to pay that.
Engine 3, we put it out,
It's on order, but the lease, timing of the lease probably won't be till the year after. That's the one you approved in
2021.
December.
So we put it out.
Right.
Engine 9, they didn't ask for this year. The
Lucas 3.
Lucas device,
well-
we have one now, and this is an upgraded one.
This is
It's
for
the,
CPR?
it's the automatic
It's
CPR.
the
We have
And
one
why
that's
can't we make the EMT pay for that?
EM, you
The
mean the
EMS.
AMR?
Yeah.
AMR?
Why wouldn't they have that instead? Like, why are we
2 years,
responsible for?
what was it, 4 or
the fire
5 years ago, I
department?
think the association bought it, the fire department bought it.
Right, so we have the old
Association.
version 2.0.
Right, this is an upgraded version. I
I'm
don't,
just wondering, like, why we would have to pay for
we don't
it.
have to.
You don't have to.
Well, I
We
don't
don't have
think
to.
it's a requirement for AMR to have it.
It's not?
I don't know, is it?
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Well, no,
Right.
the alternative is they do CPR, like,
Right.
They have, the old,
Well, they
hands.
have one that's working now, is
The
my
old-
point.
Right.
The other one is not
so
broken,
then do we really need
correct?
a new
Correct.
one?
It's working, it's just, this is an
Let's hear
upgraded
from the
model, as
doc
I
over
understood
here.
it
The
from.
old, the old device is functioning and, you know, Sean said it successfully resuscitated at least 2, maybe 3 people.
Right.
Now, the new one is nicer
We
and
lost
better
3.
and all that, but the other one's certainly functional. So
Would you
I
like
mean,
us to
I
put
would-
it
I would
out?
put-
Make
I
those
would-
Put it out or
$1,000.
take it out?
I would take that out.
Okay.
But the other thing I would bring up is Sean mentioned that the air compressor that they use to fill the tanks is on its last legs. So do we really want to take that out?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see the air?
On the bottom.
That's
Item 9.
Number 9,
Okay.
21,000.
Okay. Well, it's up to you guys, but I'm fine with that if you want to put the 21,000 back in and take out
I hate to
the,
spend more money, but I think
It
that's
just
where
like
the money
goes
should
back to what
Lucas?
I was saying. I think we should ask Sean to look at their budget and see which one's mission critical. Because they may say, no, the Lucas is, we need this, and we can wait a year for the air compressor. I don't know how we can make that decision.
Only
I know
if-
nothing
only
about
if
any
you
of this.
recall every certain thing he said when he was here.
I just,
So
it's hard.
It's hard, yeah.
So would you like us to find out before we make a budget recommendation?
Yeah, I think
Yep,
so.
I think
Okay.
we should.
So this will pretty much, we'll have another meeting.
Tony,
That's fine.
what's our
Good.
contingency in the budget for next?
You mean how much we're contributing?
Yeah.
400,000.
No, that's out of the fund balance.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, contingency.
Contingency.
It's 430 something, 435. That's because
But that's because of the,
negotiations.
That's in the finance department.
yeah, but that's because of the negotiations.
Yes.
Right.
The labor thing, right?
Okay, just backing up a bit. Number 5, Lucas. We're going to check with Sean.
5 and 9.
5 and 9.
And the air
I
compressor.
would,
which
I
I-
would take that out. I
You
mean,
would?
I
You would?
Why don't you just
I
do
would
it?
definitely take
Okay.
that. They have a functioning device.
Okay.
It's not the nicest and
What do you all think?
you know,
David? I'll defer to the
the
doctor.
most
Okay.
elegant, but
Okay,
it works.
all right.
Again,
So
I
the
was
question
just
is really
thinking-
whether the
How many people do you
compressor
lose?
is critical.
well, you
What's that
just
now?
do
So the
CPR.
question is really,
if you
is
don't
the
have it.
compressor
Like
critical?
most-
Yeah, but what's the ratio?
I think
If
it's
critical, we
critical
have
to
one.
have
If we
one.
didn't
No,
have
no,
one,
no,
no critical.
Fire
Compressor,
department
compressor.
would
Compressor.
usually
Oh, the
do-
compressor.
It's-
Yeah.
The
The
question
the
really-
air
they're
compressor.
checking on-
compressor.
Not the compressions.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
what's
that's the
better
question.
chance
I
of
mean, my
saving
my
money?
takeaway from Sean was that thing was
Well,
on its
that's right, so
last
we should
legs,
go back to
and they
that.
use it a lot to fill up
Instead
the
of
air
that's
packs.
right.
So
No, this is not the air,
I
this is
understand.
not the one for the air pack. We did
Right.
that one last year.
Right.
that's not the one for the air
That's the one
packs.
that
No, we-
Oh, okay.
This is a
This is on
compressor
a-
for
A vehicle or
tools for the maintenance,
Oh,
maintenance tools.
take that out.
It's
No,
not in.
no, we didn't, we
not
put it,
in.
we put it to the
He was
next
gonna move
year.
that 21,000
Please.
over.
We're trying to ask them to
Used to
make it
maintain, it
last
says right
one
here in the
more year.
description, used to maintain air pressure and air brakes and tools.
Okay.
So if it craps out at some point, we have
Yeah,
contingency,
correct,
we
yeah.
have line item transfers.
Right,
Fire
right.
engine crashes.
That's the
So
thought
I'd
there.
take it
Yep.
out. And-
Okay,
And the Lucas device, we gonna throw it into 2021 just as a placeholder, or?
You could do that,
we can
yeah.
do that. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Joe?
And the only other item we did not talk about, no, there's 2 of them, right? The
Right.
technology.
Yep.
We reduced that a bit,
And then the car.
and then the TAR 201 is the fire marshal car. And we're kind of hoping we can get through another year with that one.
So is that each year it's a different car?
Total.
or
No, it's one
70.
car.
For
Their request.
$70,000?
$70,000.
That's the request.
Yeah,
The $70,000 car?
Yeah.
Not a van and not a SUV, it's a car?
No, it's not.
No, it's an
It's an SUV.
It's an
Yeah.
SUV.
Should say.
Are you looking at 8?
Yes,
8, yep.
nothing in the budget.
35.
Well,
Right.
yeah, but it's
35
not,
over 2 years. So
It was a
Not-
total,
not-
it was a total of 70,000
70,000.
for that vehicle.
Okay.
So we just thought maybe at least that one could hang in, the one, current one could hang another year.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. And the technology we reduced a little, well,
Was that in conjunction? I
Cut it
mean, I
almost
take it, you
little in
didn't
half.
just pull a number out of the air. right?
No, it's in conjunction with the fact that the town's working on a server project, and we hope to incorporate that with the fire department so we can save some money.
I don't
That's
even
where
know
that
why
comes
I asked. I like the
Pull the
reduction.
number out of the air.
Didn't you just have a problem recently with the server that created problems for some?
That's right,
towns?
yeah. We're in the process of redoing a bunch of things, and so it's good timing.
Anything
I
else
would
on?
like to suggest, as far as technology is
Sure.
concerned, that we do, at some point in time, really centralize and see if we can.
We could.
Okay. That's it for fire, but we're not gonna, are we gonna leave it the way it is? We're gonna check with Sean and the
We just took out
18,000
the-
for the
no, we just took
compressor?
out the
Okay, we
numbers.
changed that, so this is good to go.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, just confirming. Human Services, the $67,000 is for a 10-passenger lift-equipped vehicle. We had to leave that in there so that she can apply for a grant for this, so that's the only reason why it's in there.
It's not an impact.
It's a 80/20, I believe, the grant, and
So
so,
20% of this?
yeah.
Okay.
But it has to be requested in order for the, as I understand
That's-
it, in order for her to apply for
It
the
has to
grant.
be in your budget to
Correct.
apply for the,
To apply for the grant, yeah.
but if we get the grant, the real impact is 20% of it.
Correct.
Oh,
So
so the
80% of that-
67 is the total number.
The total number, yeah.
So
Right.
that would be like
So-
worst case scenario if we didn't get the grant.
Right,
14.
so
Got it.
48 of it roughly, a little more, would get reimbursed by, in other words, you buy it and you get reimbursed, and then you'd have that money for something else. That's how it happened last time, too.
Okay. We might have that for the air compressor.
Good, good, that's right.
The library had no capital budget requests. Parks,
Parks, so the first two were irrigation requests, and with the first one, we put out a year for the center field. The West River, we just eliminated. Thought they were, nice, but nothing.
they're
that's
very
not
nice
critical.
things to have, but to irrigate fields right now when we're,
Yeah, when things turn around.
yeah, when things are,
Right.
right, it's just.
Same
Okay,
thing with the concrete dugout. It's a nice thing to do, but
we put that one out a year, and the tennis courts, 16,000. They're used a lot, my opinion, they're used a lot, and they really are in bad shape. That was just my opinion, I'm only one person.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, no, I have to.
So I think we have to
agree.
do it.
I go
Okay.
by those, and they're always in use.
There's always
busy.
people over
Yeah.
there.
There's always in use, yeah.
Yep. And they do need to be done. Police department.
the police department is desperately in need of a new computer setup, and that's what the first one is. I do recommend that highly. And the second one is for one vehicle, which they've cut back from two.
They used to ask for two, if you remember, every year, and they were
Yeah.
asking for one.
It's not on order though, is it? Or is it? No.
No.
So is
The
that, I
idling.
mean, is that something that can get pushed out to the next year?
I mean, you could, eventually with these vehicles, because they're always,
Well, they never shut them off is the problem, so they wear them out. I mean, what's happening with that idling technology that I recommended?
We sent that over, and I haven't heard back. I apologize. But
that's the kind of capital request that backs up on you if you don't fund them, because it's a constant.
yeah, I did
I would
argue for
keep-
one
I would
going
keep
forward a
one.
couple years
Yeah, they'll
ago.
want 3 next year then, basically.
No.
Two.
Well, they can want,
No, if we
They-
push
yes,
this one.
correct, that's my point. Next year you'll want 3.
oh, you're saying if we don't do this?
Right.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Over there?
Yeah.
Leave one?
It's reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see how we have a choice.
Okay, security surveillance recording system. I don't know too much about this, I apologize.
Right, that was
But I
just
think
to
Frank said
rekey and
rekey some locks or
Yeah.
something, and we
But
thought
we didn't
we
recommend
could,
We took that out.
to take
yeah,
it out.
well, we
Push it back
postponed
a
it a
year.
year.
Yeah.
Take it out
That's
completely.
good.
Public Works.
All right.
We have, truck replacement reserve.
Right.
The request of 246.
So did we back one out?
We did. Yep. We backed out a Mason dump truck and put it in the following year, and just kept a plow truck in there. Sure.
So they have another truck in 2021 too then, because
Correct.
that
The
math
plow,
doesn't
it's the
add up.
Mason, and then it's a pickup.
Okay.
So instead of having the Mason and the plow the first year, the plow truck in the first year and the Mason and the pickup in the second year, sort of evens out the funding a little more.
What's an equipment reserve? It's just.
That's a lease payment for a sweeper. That's most of that.
So it's not really a reserve.
No, as a matter of fact, that's probably not a correct name. You should
No.
take that off.
Because I would say we can.
Yeah. You could probably take, the lease payment for the sweeper is 55. So,
So you're saying we could cut that this
That's
year?
it.
you could.
Thank you.
Cut that to 55?
Could.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And where
Yeah,
would you
let's-
spread out the rest of it, or?
Well, did we typically have an equipment reserve?
Sometimes
too?
it's for he has to do some, eventually you have to replace a backhoe and a payloader. And so sometimes it's, he listed a few things here. It's nothing I don't think we can,
I'd say let's
necessary.
do the 55.
it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that
From
works.
80, is it 83 to 55?
Yeah.
Okay. The road construction reserve, he had requested $1 million. And my thought was maybe we could reduce that to 800,000.
Which was last year's appropriation.
Yeah. We could certainly do more if you'd like, but,
He had gone a few years
yeah,
prior
he
to
said
that.
we,
That's correct,
when we
yeah.
went down to the
Less.
500,000 and he got behind,
Which is
so-
why he increased it.
Right,
So we get some state and federal money for that,
we do.
We get 65,000 from LoSiP.
that's all?
We also get 250,000 from town road aid. It's also applies to this, so we get roughly a little over 300,000.
Is that state money?
So
So we're gonna get it this year, or we don't know? Okay.
We heard
That's
a
part
rumor,
of
we
all
heard a
that
rumor
money.
maybe they're not
Right.
gonna touch that, but who knows,
You never know.
till we see it.
So that's 300,000 that we may or may not have.
Correct.
It's infrastructure, so you're hoping that he's true to.
So you always
Good
figure the
report.
budget with the worst-case scenario rather than the best-case scenario and put in money from the reserve?
For which, the state?
Yeah, for things like this.
Typically, so this is,
Well, if we got the 250, we would use the allocation plus the 250?
no,
No, we wouldn't, so.
250 is part of the allocation.
part of the allocation.
So that's,
Right.
Dave's
So we have an estimated funding level to keep our roads in good shape and to keep them, passable, and that's what Warren comes up with. He has a road list and the roads that he'd recommend and a 5-year plan, and that's what the funding level is.
Right.
We get 300,000 from the state, but I'm not sure you would spend any less. Maybe you would if you didn't get 300,000 from the state. Maybe you'd spend, which has to do with the maintenance and the upkeep of the capital
But the
asset.
300 is in the 800.
Correct.
So out of our budget, if
It's
we get the
500.
state money. it's-
Right. Correct.
Why do we put, to David's point, why do we put the 800 in? Because we have to get the state money?
No.
No.
All you have to do for the state is to put in the 300. Anything over that, you're spending because you want to maintain the roads in a better.
But
Well,
so basically,
You know what I mean?
by putting in the 800, you're saying we expect to use 500 of ours, but we have to put the 300 in there
Correct.
as well. So this really reflects
About 500,000
$500,000 of,
capital of town funds, correct.
so if we don't get that, we're only spending 500.
but it's the same situation in a sense as the $67,000 for the van on human services. You have to put it in the budget in order to.
You do,
in order
because it's
to-
reimbursable.
Yeah.
It's a reimbursement grant. So it's reimbursement, so they make sure that you spend it first.
Yep.
So you don't just get the grant and not spend it on what you're supposed to spend it on.
But we base our taxes on that bigger number, those bigger numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
And you could certainly, reduce it to 300,000, then your roads would be in more of a state of disrepair than they are now. I mean, it's, if you think they are, I mean, that's the judgment call you have to make.
Well, I'm saying this, we don't get it, we can put it in from the fund balance, or can we not do that? It's
Well,
capital
I
expense.
wouldn't do that for roads because it's something you do every year. I mean, it's kind of a bad habit to get into. Fund balance, you try
So
to
we'll have to
do,
do it going
use for
forward.
things that are, you know, either one time or emergency or, you know, if you have a,
Right, so if we
No,
don't
I
get the
understand.
money this year, we spend 500
Right.
on roads.
correct, exactly.
That's
So let's say the governor reduces town road aid and LoSiP, and so we have $300,000 less from those two. Then this could go to 500.
Right.
So what's our fund balance this year as compared to last year? It's higher, isn't it?
A little bit,
A
yeah.
little bit higher?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And lastly, the Bridge and Waterways Reserve, that's for some grant. What is it, the 25,000, we cut it from 50 to 25,000.
Right. We have some flooding issues that we wanted to, it helps with some, Warren, with some, if there's some flooding issues, he uses that for. And we also might use that to help identify some relief and some funding, you know, for grant
Matching,
purposes.
right.
Mhm.
As I mentioned at the Board of Selectmen meeting a couple weeks ago, we've met with, I don't think there are anyone we haven't met with, at the state and the federal level, and we're still hoping that they're gonna help us with some grants and ways we can seek to help the folks with flooding issues, because it continues.
So,
There's no
Are
longer
there
100
issues
year.
existing for that 25, or just money in case?
It's used on a somewhat regular basis for repairs to, mostly to culverts and to, things
But
of that
as they
nature.
arise, in other words.
Correct.
There's no culverts now
No,
that need
there's
any
not.
of this.
No, there's not.
Contingency.
We also may use part for a study to try to identify some flooding issues for grant funds that Beth had indicated. But there is nothing specific identified now. So you can,
So we reduced it from 50 to 25,000. But, you know, if you wanna reduce it more,
you could,
you could.
Had a whole meeting with the residents down there just recently, didn't we, regarding flooding and things of that nature?
FEMA decided we were not eligible. It wasn't enough, right, to
Right.
qualify, so.
correct.
So I mean, it
So
is-
that's when
it
we
is an issue. It's
began
hard
to
not
reach
put
out
any
to
money
this,
toward that.
you know, the federal officials, and we're hoping to have the Army Corps of Engineers come. We're, you know, just trying to get them to help us as to every day, daily thinking, making phone calls. But we're gonna keep trying.
Good.
Because there's no longer 100-year floods, there's no longer 50-year floods. It's like we have
Every year floods.
every year floods, or sometimes 3 floods a season. It's crazy. So we have some serious needs down there, and we need funding for it, so we're gonna continue to pursue it.
Kind of be inclined to leave it in.
Same here.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Recreation and outdoor volleyball court. It's a nice thing to have, in my opinion, but we just, at this point.
Right.
I thought it was
All things
something that we
considered,
could
Right.
perhaps not fund this year. And that was the only request that Recreation had. Any comments on that?
No.
Okay. Waste management, Tony knows more about this than
The
I do.
compactors down there need a replacement. There are 2 of them,
Mhm.
and I think they're original to the transfer station, if I'm not mistaken. So that's,
One of them's
I
in
don't know,
really bad shape,
25 years or something.
yeah. It's
So-
been grinding and grinding and grinding.
So, you know, if your compactors go down, you're in trouble. So I wouldn't recommend you reduce that. The second one's for a container,
For what?
like, you know, the containers. First one's the compactor that crushes the stuff. The
Oh, the
10,000
container
for,
that you throw the stuff.
Yeah, one
Right.
of those big
And that's in that
dumpsters.
better shape too? I mean, that's.
there's like a series of them. We have a rotating schedule to replace them on every once in a while. I mean, you could probably get away with pushing that out a year, it's not gonna be critical, if you want.
I mean, I would.
Could always come back to
Okay.
you.
Right, that's
Yeah.
all
Okay.
it's- I would,
Let's-
Could always come
let's,
back to you,
yeah.
if for some reason it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, let's pull it out. Okay, the outdoor pool,
what are
exactly. Take a look, zeros. There were 105,000 requested and it's now zero. And I think that's it, right? Okay. So what we did, before you guys did, department requests for a total of, where are we?
$1,550,000.
It's 1,811,347 minus, took off 146,000.
So we're now at,
Give me a second here. 1,665,347.
anybody have anything else on capital that they'd like to change at this point?
So our capital recommendation would be what?
1,665,347.
1 million?
Oh, I see it down here,
See
yeah.
the 1,811?
Yeah, I see it down below.
Yeah.
Operating budget.
Right, that's it.
On a
Wait a minute,
requested, on
wait a
a
minute.
requested of 3.3
3.3,
million.
correct,
Right.
right.
So basically
Cut it in half, basically, yeah.
Any other changes on that? Do we vote on this now, Tony, or I forget, or do we?
Could, if you
You
want.
are you ready to vote on the capital recommendation, or do you want to wait till the end? Do what? I didn't hear what you said.
I didn't say.
Oh, okay.
Vote on it.
Joe says to vote.
What do you guys think? Just capital.
Yeah.
Want to vote on the capital? Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. That we recommend to the Board of
recommend to the Board of
Finance.
Finance on the March 1st meeting.
March
right?
7th.
7th meeting, to accept our recommendations for
Of?
the capital budget
Reductions.
reductions for
Of?
2020.
So you want to recommend the capital budget as presented, which is 1,665,347.
Thank
How's
you.
that?
That's,
Is there a
Even better.
second? Somebody, second? No? Good God.
Why don't we hold it until we go
Okay.
through all the others too?
Okay.
And see where.
See if we need
see
to
where
come
we're
back to
at.
it.
So will you
Okay.
There's
friendly?
no rush for us to do
Okay.
it. so.
All right. So we will stop and withdraw that.
Cut everything.
So we'll just withdraw the
it's
motion at
just
this point,
a
okay?
further reduction.
So we just agreed to cut it.
Okay,
Right.
I guess we're.
all right.
What was the question?
Weird.
So now we're moving on to operating.
This, and then we need something else. and we have to get something.
Flexible, it's being flexible.
If you guys wouldn't mind, maybe it might be a good idea to do the Board of Ed, because they're all sitting here. Even though you're at the end, we're gonna do a friendly thing to help you. Because we're gonna stay no matter what, but we don't wanna make you do that. So, does everybody agree?
Sure.
We're gonna do the Board of Ed
Oh,
first,
yeah.
even though it's at the
Definitely,
end, because
yeah.
they're here. So certainly if you have questions, it'd be nice to have you here. I'm glad you guys came. So, whoops, I did it this time, David.
Did you? I think I did.
I banged it. Nancy's going on alone there. Okay. So, it's almost at the end of your budget, and the department request was for $15,519,603, and a 5.77% increase. And I would open
Sorry.
the floor to discussion on this. Anybody have any comments on this budget? Somebody?
It's like what, go through a line item?
There isn't line items because we don't do that. They give us if I've got this right, they give us a department request and the line items, you guys decide, not us. So we would have to give them a percent, I
Okay.
guess, or an amount to reduce, correct? Okay.
Increase enrollment.
Increase enrollment?
We don't want to increase enrollment.
No, but I mean, it's an increase in
So, Terry, you want to start? I'll do it that way.
Maybe make
Yeah,
another
or you want me
motion.
to start this way? I don't care.
Have Joe make it.
No, not motion, this is just.
No, we're gonna have a discussion
Oh.
about this
Just
amount,
comments.
the comments on this budget.
No, I liked our original conversation of going back to the departments and seeing if they could take one last look, now that we see what each department's total impact has on the town, increasing the mill rate again, to go back and just see if it's possible to either make any reductions or defer to the following year.
So we're talking about the operating budget right now, the Woodbridge Board of Ed, or are you saying all? You wanna go back to
I
all?
was
or-
saying all of them, but,
Okay,
because I don't think it's just the Board of Ed, I think it's fire, I think it's
Police.
police, I think it's everybody that's going up.
okay. Joe?
No, all right. Well, look, our strength has been education, and I think,
Yeah,
You said there was no vote on this, but I want to get it correct.
yes,
Each department revisit their operating budget
the operating budget.
as to what they can reduce or defer to
To-
another year.
Correct, look at the line items for their budget for the upcoming
Yeah.
fiscal year, to see if there's any further cuts or deferrals to the
Reductions are, thank you very much.
reductions, or deferrals to the following year.
Not a percentage, just take a look.
Yeah, that's
No,
what
I don't, I feel it's,
Fiscal
to give
review.
an arbitrary, like, 2% across the board, I don't think it's, I don't know if we can do that.
Well, you have to just be prepared for some departments may come back with $1,000
That's true.
Or nothing.
or nothing.
Without giving them further direction, of a
That's
percentage, just say, take a look wherever you
I
can
mean, a
cut.
percentage is, it's a bit arbitrary because, you've got, I don't know. I would just have them go back and look
Well, they
without
might-
us giving them
As Tony said, though, they may come back and say, we found $500.
well, that could happen. And then I think
And
it
then
goes
what?
to the Board of Finance.
Okay.
Or
Or
then they open it up for us to have to cut them,
right,
because they didn't do it themselves.
Is
And
that
then
any
the Board
different
of
than
Finance.
just saying that we've identified the need to reduce each budget by whatever percent that we decide that is going to be? I mean, whether we tell them, hey, we'd like you to come back and give us a budget, and then if they do, and it's not enough, or it's not what we feel is appropriate, we then turn around and say, well, we're gonna cut this anyway. Isn't it just as effective to indicate that our recommendation to the finance people is gonna be X less than what's here?
which was
So-
what we talked about in the beginning.
Right.
Right.
So therefore, you can expect to have this much less.
But you can't do it evenly, that's the problem, because, I mean, you've got, Board of Assessment Appeals, and their budget's at $3,600. I mean, Yeah,
Well,
I'm sure they can
one-
find
well,
2%.
The
1%
percentage,
is
usually, the
$36.
impact on the budget is nowhere near.
Right.
Yeah, taking 2% off $3,600 is clearly
Right.
not as
That's
much
gonna
as
go anywhere.
taking 2% off a $15 million
Correct.
budget. So. Okay, what do
Well,
you
I
think,
think-
Joe? I'm sorry, I was gonna try to get opinions from everybody.
No, I think the superintendent, presented his need for the budget next year, and, our strength has been in education, and I don't believe in, reducing it any further than what he's
Mhm.
recommended.
Okay.
That's why I am.
Mika?
The folks who, I have been approached by residents who have indicated that 5.77% is significantly higher than they would anticipate would have come. Not coincidentally, most of those don't have students in Beecher Road School. But my tendency is to say that is significantly high. And that we should very closely look to see what we can do. I recognize exactly how much work, how much effort has gone into them doing what they do. I took the tour, I appreciate very much so that there's a lot that needs to happen there. But in this climate, in this environment, where we are right now, it just might be too much. And it's a matter of what can we do to mitigate that, to bring it down, so that it's not as significant as it is. Is there something that can be done? And I think it's something we need to look at. One, because of the number, and two, because there's just not, we just don't have the money. So.
I heard from residents from different groups, for example, the people who have kids at Beecher, keep that one, but don't cut other stuff, or cut other stuff. Or, for example, people who love the library, cut education, but keep the library the way it is.
Which
So-
is why we gotta cut them all.
Well, kinda, I mean.
You can't just.
You wanna, I feel terrible, Woodbridge Board of Education, it's our schools, I mean, they were there for me when my kids were here, I have a hard time with
The
this.
challenge is more or less universal in terms of just in terms of everything we do.
I know,
So
it's painful.
I don't disagree with what you say, Joe, and I certainly don't disagree with what
No.
you say. My kids went through Beecher School, and that
So do
certainly
I. I
prepared them for what.
That's
And I
why
was,
we're
I
here
was on the
to
other
To
side,
voice our opinions. So it's
I
not-
fought so hard for every single thing, wanted nothing ever cut when my kids were
no
at Board of
longer, right,
Education,
right.
it's painful.
But I think we need to look at not only this, but since we are looking at this, I
Yeah.
just thought I'd state that, I think we need to do something to reduce it. And hopefully we can work together to do that.
But then Joe made the point about,
Well,
All of them.
I mean, I just don't think,
Joe,
it's just not,
what do you do with a 0%?
Mika's not, he agrees to it.
completely agree.
What do you do with a
Completely agree.
0%, someone who came
Well,
in with
that's-
no increases,
Well, you tell them we want a 3% decrease.
okay.
I mean, if you can, I don't know that they can. And again, so the conversation is, we need you came in 0. If we had given them direction up front, we want 5% reduction. Maybe they can't do it, or maybe they say, I can give you that, but I can't do this that I do now. And then we have to decide whether we want the 5% reduction and do away with that program or not. But, I think for too many years, I think people have either stayed, if they stayed stable, flat, they thought that was great. And I think it's untenable now. I think we're to the point where we can't, that 0% is not all that impressive anymore. We have to have reductions. But it's not fair to say to the Board of Ed, you're too high and you have to be, unless we're willing to get everybody else to cut as well. Or at least try. I still think we should have done this earlier, but I'm not gonna go back there.
Oh, you will again, Joe, I know you will.
Nope, I'm all done.
How many times have you said it?
Just about enough.
I know, I got it. David?
Yeah, I mean, it's always easier to have more money and do more things. The question is, you don't always have more money. And then the solution is, well, how do you maintain the quality and spend less money? And does that mean increasing classroom sizes? Does it mean reducing programs? You know, what does it mean? And you know, what do you lose by it? So it's, you know, it's not something that we can do. We can only suggest to the Board of Education, you know, this is an awful lot to ask. And what can you do to, you know, mitigate some of these expenditures? And, you know, you're the best people to know that.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, do you want to go through the whole budget, or do you want to just make a recommendation to ask everyone to reduce X percent?
I don't think it makes sense for us to go through the whole budget.
My suggestion would be.
We did some,
Right,
as
you've already-
you saw,
you've
you
already-
know.
But everything we're talking about, though, we're talking about in addition to what you've done, is that correct? In other words, if we come up with a percentage, it's in addition.
Yeah,
It's based on,
It's off of
it's,
these
the number
numbers,
we're
yeah.
talking about bringing lower is the BOS proposed, the one that you and Tony have already gone over, correct?
Except,
So-
well, that's again up to you. If you don't agree with some of the stuff that we did, you can put it all back.
Probably.
Tony, you know, I mean, I know mathematically I can figure out what the numbers mean. Based on what you know of the departments and the budgets and everything that you've done over the X number of years you've been here, if we were to say, we need to, we were to suggest an additional cut
Yeah.
of 1.5%, for example.
Right.
Is that feasible without, you know, without,
I can tell you that
crippling?
a lot of these, it's been years since these have developed. Programs have developed, budgets have developed. It's nothing that happened overnight. And so, you know, I just think you have to have your own priorities. You have to lead with your own priorities, and what's important is important and what isn't. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, if you can't have the best in each department, then you have to identify what's important and what isn't necessarily as important.
Right.
I just don't think we can make that determination because, again,
No.
going back to what I said originally, I mean, we might look at this and see line items that we don't necessarily deem critical, but from the Board of Ed's, you know, opinion, they may have a totally different opinion. They may say, like, we cannot cut this. We looked at it, we're as bare bones as we can.
I think that's what
But
they
I
told
mean-
us the night they came to present their budget.
Right.
Was they had reduced as much as they could. They started higher and then reduced it, right? I think you said that. So
But
this is, okay.
A little idealistic, I guess.
Okay.
My view is that we're representing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And to that end, we can say we don't want the town to realize a 7.6% increase. You've said that already.
I have.
You and Tony
Right.
have brought that down to
Right.
3.92%. We can, as a board, determine that we don't want to present a budget that's 4% over our last year's budget because of all the circumstances and everything we've done for the past year. You know, everything that's come in. We can say, okay, all things considered, education and everything else considered, we would rather see 2%, or we would rather see 2.5%, or we would rather keep it under 40 mils. But that's not taking into, you know, it's not, I don't think we need to know everything that's going on in every department in order to be able to come to that conclusion if we're representing the group, if we're representing the town. I think we're making this decision based on what we know all our residents are going to accept or be able to deal with, as opposed to what everybody needs or what everybody says they need.
So do you want us to go back to each department as the Board of Selectmen?
I think we
And have come back,
should,
or do we say that to the Board of Finance?
as a board, I'd like to see us
Who have the
say,
ultimate control in the end, but I mean, we can certainly do it.
what I'd like to see is us say, as a board, we'd like to see this go down by X.
Who do we say that to, the departments, or we say that to the Board of Finance? That's what I'm not clear
I
about.
guess if we say it to the Board of Finance, it's saying it to the departments. I don't, and this is where I don't know the,
I think the difference in the process might be, and I don't know, but if I was running a budget, and certainly the one the size of the BOE, and the people that I answered to for the budget said we have to have a cut, I think I'd rather work collaboratively with that person rather than just say, no, that's my number, and okay. And then the CEO, for instance, cuts the budget.
so Joe,
It's much better to work together to cut the budget.
and I'm certainly not suggesting we don't do that. I guess I'm confused now. Because I
AM two.
thought you were indicating, so what you're suggesting then is we don't make any change.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think what I'm suggesting is, I can't say it because I've said it too many times.
You should
No,
have started
I
in
guess, let me
the
start.
fall.
let
We
me
should
look at
do,
But-
we
but-
should tell them, we need these reductions right across the board.
Right.
And we're gonna work with you to get it. And you're gonna
Yeah.
tell us, I can't do it, or I can do it, but this has to go, and, yeah, I'm
We're
saying,
saying the same
I
thing.
think we're saying the same.
Okay,
saying
so
same
we're
thing.
saying it to say to the
I just think it's
departments?
preferable to have that give and take, even
Absolutely.
at this late juncture, than it is to say, we're just gonna cut you. To your point, we're not competent, I don't think we're competent.
And all I'm suggesting is
As
that.
I said,
that-
they gave us a responsible, they
But-
cut as much as they could,
Well, they,
you know?
yeah,
So now we gotta work with them again, and my question to you is, are we going to ask as the Board of Selectmen and not vote tonight?
Or do you
Or-
have it presented to the board?
Or have them presented to the Board of Finance, and we
Yeah, Jerry sent it.
vote for what we've done or, here, send it to the Board of Finance, and then say, we did some of it, and we would respectfully request, or whatever, that you do X% more each department.
I
What do you
think the
think?
only difference in terms of what we are saying is that from a collaboration standpoint, we don't have a lot of time.
Right,
From that
that's true.
perspective. So
That's
it's
why
it's
I'm
really
saying-
just-
so it would be better to
Do the latter.
send it and let them collaborate
With
with
the
one
board.
body versus
Right.
two.
Right.
Okay.
That's all, that's the only difference. Otherwise, I think we're very much saying the same thing.
Okay,
No, I'm okay with that too.
okay. So, do you wanna go through the whole thing and look at what we did, or do you just wanna, whatever it was, what did we do, how much percent did we take off on operating? I mean, I'm assuming you all looked at it,
Yes.
because you had these
Yeah.
Yes.
for a few days.
So what's your objective?
That's the key.
What do you want for a total budget
I mean, do you want-
increase,
is it
the
based
mill
on-
rate or whatever?
Is it based on mill rate increase? Is it based on mill rate? Is it based on, what's your?
I mean, from my opinion, I'd like to just have a percentage thrown out there and see what people can do with
But what,
it. I just think it's.
shouldn't we have a percentage that, you don't wanna say 0.5%? I
No,
mean, you've
of
gotta
course
make
not.
something that makes sense to get the budget to where
Yeah.
you want it to be.
What's
Yeah,
the
but-
implication? Why don't we look at it just to get the information and just to start somewhere? If we decrease what you've got here, why don't we start at the lower side and go work up?
Well,
Like, say 1.5%.
well, just let me give you.
Okay.
3% brings the mill rate under 40.
Yeah, you said 3.25 before.
Well, that's because you made some adjustments.
Okay,
So it's not down to 3%.
It's a
yeah.
3% in addition to what we've done already,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Well, a lot of these departments have remained flat or have had reductions. There are only a few that have significant increases. And those are also the ones that have the biggest budgets.
Mhm.
So those are the ones I think we should look at.
You're saying a total of 3%, Tony, right, for everything?
Yeah.
But you're saying
But
pull out certain
some-
ones to,
What
I'm
I'm
not
saying is
clear.
a lot of most of these haven't changed much. If you go through the budget, they're essentially flat. But some have changed significantly, and those are the ones that are the big budget items. You know, the police department, the fire department, and the two boards of education. For the most part,
Okay. So do you want to vote on this to recommend to the Board of Finance what we've done so far with what we did tonight in operating budget, and then respectfully request that the Board of Finance look to reduce three, or work with the departments collaboratively, I think you said.
Right.
So we'll ask them to not just do it on their own, but reach out to all the departments and see if they could find further cost savings for another reduction of 3%. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are.
Okay. What do you guys think?
We're saying give it one last look before they.
Okay. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with Joe.
I didn't hear what he said. Oh, this Joe. Oh,
What you just said. Big job.
what I just said. Okay, so I'm asking if you.
I was listening.
Okay, so I was trying to sort of say what I think all of
think
we
you
agree.
said it.
Okay, all right. Hope you got that right, Jerry? What did I say? You want to read it back so it's correct for the minutes?
Well, I'm hoping our recording equipment is working.
Okay,
All right, that we are going to send to the Board of Finance the budget, the operating budget as presented, and the capital budget with our reductions, additional reductions, and request that they work with the departments to obtain an additional 3% reduction
For the operating.
for the operating.
operating, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
operating.
I mean, there might be something in capital they could
Well,
come
they
up
can
with as
find
well,
that
but, right,
themselves, but we're
Yeah.
talking,
right.
the 3% we're talking operating.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any other comments on that?
Well, I'll second that motion. if
Okay.
that's a motion.
Okay, so who made
So-
the motion?
Terry.
Terry made
Yep.
the motion.
So, let me
I,
just
did I,
Just
you
for-
you made it,
just
right?
for
I drift,
Did
okay,
I
go ahead.
just-
For clarification purposes, you have to actually recommend an amount.
Yeah.
So the
So
operating
what's the-
budget amount is, total expenditures of 51,501,640.
Which we took 53. We started with 53, right? 356, 811 in requests. And before we got here tonight, we reduced it to 51,647,
Correct.
640.
And then we further reduced it tonight to 51,501,640.
The operating budget?
Total expenditures.
Total.
Yeah, I made a motion for the
Somebody said
capital.
operating, so the total budget
We can do it separately if you want. but-
has been reduced tonight to 51,501,640,
Correct.
and that is what we're sending to the,
And you have non-tax revenues of 3,331,552.
3,331.
I'm sorry, 3,331,552.
52.
And a tax amount to be raised in taxes of 48,170,088.
170,088.
And I got one more for you. Mill rate, 41.27. 41.27.
So that's, all right.
So we're recommending those numbers with the direction to work with the departments.
Right.
And forget the operative, work with the departments for 3%.
To further
Reductions.
reduce the operating, no, just the whole
The
budget.
The whole
Budget.
budget.
The whole budget.
By 3, an additional,
was
an
my-
additional 3%.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Any other, we have a motion and a second? You seconded
I
it, right,
did.
Joe? You guys have any other comments on that motion?
comments after the motion?
No, we haven't voted yet. We have a motion and a second,
No.
but now that we have a motion and a second, are there any other comments on that motion?
If, just want to make, from a, just a level set standpoint, Tony, if the board, if the finance folks were to reduce the various departments by 3%, is that like indicating, for example, Amity Regional has an increase?
That's the one you can't reduce.
Oh, that's right, that's, okay. But, or, let's say the Woodbridge Board of Ed is that now saying that their increase would be 2.77, is that what we're,
No.
if we went across the
We're
board?
saying the whole total, the total budget.
Total, so
reduced by
how
three.
it happens is, okay.
Working with the departments,
Departments,
maybe
okay.
somebody can
So
do a bigger number.
Maybe it would be little here and
So
then,
they can
okay.
be better.
Be
Not as
1%
much.
one place and 2% someplace else.
Okay,
So-
any other,
That's right.
Okay.
Based on,
any other discussion on that? Anybody,
And where
so,
does that, with the, can you give us the numbers, the same numbers you just gave us,
Mhm.
with 3%?
He's got the formula.
total expenditures of 49,956,590. I'll just give you the mill rate.
Mhm.
And the mill rate is 39.94. That's 3%. There's a little wiggle room in there because of Amity and a few other things, but it gives you the idea, general idea. That's what 3% will get you.
and be advised, we haven't heard from the state yet. So all
Right.
this work could be,
Worse. Right, but, I mean,
I
really,
know.
that's gotta be the fund balance.
Could be, yeah, yeah. Because you might not really know until.
and this is also a request to the Board of Finance to work with the departments, which
Right.
we're just requesting, we can't, they're their own entity.
They own the budget.
They own the budget, right. Any other comments on that?
Current mill rate 39.8.
9.4,
No, the current mill rate.
39.83.
39.83, yeah.
9.83, and we'd be talking 9.94.
Right.
Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
You're opposed?
Yep.
Okay.
We didn't hear from
All
you
right.
during the discussion.
I think we did a lot. Okay. Okay, is that it? Motion to adjourn? I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thanks.
Listen, I'm talking. Love that you had it out to me. Love, so don't stand and shout at me. Love, so baby, farewell. Oh, goodbye. No, I can go on. For what she used, you killed my golden goose. And from now on, I'm on the loose. No brother can listen to me. Ain't right, Lord, no, ain't right, no, no. Ain't right, so baby, farewell. Oh, goodbye. Ain't right, Lord, no, ain't right, no, no, ain't right, so baby,